So why don't we start with quarterback and just talk about the overall landscape? How do you kind of see this position shaking out in fantasy in 2021?
I am still trying to decide and figure out and research whether last year was an anomaly or a changing of the guard, because last year the late round quarterback truly died because it used to be we were chasing those late round quarterbacks because they offered high rushing floors. That may still be the case for some names, but now the best quarterbacks in the league also have high rushing floors. So they have the best arms and the best legs in the league. In potent offenses, because coaches and young offensive coordinators are also intelligent enough to build around and then cater to those quarterbacks. I even say in the Patrick Mahomes blurb, there's a reason why him, Tyreek Hill, essentially exploded down the stretch, because in the second half of the season, they were running the second highest pass play rate and neutral game script and with a lead. When Patrick Mahomes throws the ball every time he drops back, essentially, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to be awesome. It's going to result in fantasy points. And so that is the thing, and that's why the top 5 quarterbacks are a tier of their own, and they're so important because they are truly the best. And even in DFS last year, if you play, whether it was cash games or tournaments, the cheap quarterback essentially died for a majority of weekends because that 4K, 4,500 guy had no chance of scoring 20 more fantasy points and matching those top 5 guys. And that's what makes every draft unique this year, because I don't know if that was just an anomaly or if maybe that is, since these quarterbacks are essentially in the same exact situation, maybe that's how we should view the landscape of this position moving forward for at least like the next decade or whatever.
Yeah, it is interesting that top 5, like I've always been a late round quarterback enthusiast ever since JJ Zachary's, like his stuff has always, like it's just always been the case, supply, demand, but the edge was just so ridiculous when you're getting 30 points a week from Dak before he gets hurt, Kyler Murray, like you just can't make those points up, especially obviously in Superflex and things of that nature. But yeah, I'm starting to reconsider my overarching strategy here and maybe dipping in. I know I said earlier I've been going, late round again, Fitzmagic, Justin Fields, and like trying to, hit lightning late. But maybe I do have to reevaluate, because it is so true that the best arms are also some of the best legs at the position. And how do you beat that? Like, it's literally just the Konami code, as they call it. Like, it is a cheat code. And that's fine. I like that you equated it to DFS too, because I noticed myself all of last year, every single week paying up for quarterback. I'm like, I'm not doing this right. I used to always pay down. All the research suggests you got to pay down at quarterback and pay up everywhere else. But the only times I would win money were the weeks where I was going in, expensive at the quarterbacks, whether it was Russell Wilson early on, Dak, whoever was facing the Falcons, like whatever big name quarterback. So that's a good way to kind of pinpoint it in my mind. Like I want to wait on quarterback, yet when I play DFS every single week, I'm paying up every single week. Like that should probably change my season-long philosophy, my best ball philosophy too. Interesting points there. So you're saying you got to lock in your top 5 guy. Are you essentially making sure you get that? Like, where's that cut off for you?
So I think the one tier breaker truly could be Jalen Hurts, who I have in tier 2 because he did average 12 carries per game and his 3 full starts. I still question the arm talent because even going back to Oklahoma, he was never a guy who was like a very accurate thrower. He was purely an athlete, and that's how Lincoln Riley got the best of him. And last year even, he either took off or chucked the ball deep, and those deep balls were inaccurate, but at least that's what he did, which allows itself to higher volatility in fantasy football because the risk comes with the reward, right? It's baked in that perhaps sometimes those catches get caught. Thus, there are more higher yardage breakout games. And so if there is someone who could bust into the top 5, if only because he is truly an athlete who looks to run the ball every time, it is Jalen Hurts. And that's the one player I'm worried about, honestly.
Yeah, the one for me might be, I think he's your QB6 as well, as Justin Herbert. Sure. I mean, I could see this guy chucking 45, 50 TDs, kind of having that humongous breakout season that you get in round 6, 7 after those big names are gone. Although, I mean, the way that Lamar Jackson's falling these days, like I might not even have to worry about that. If I can get Lamar Jackson around 5, like a game over, I'm going to do that every single time, which I've seen sometimes. But I could see Herbert with that revamped offensive line going from worst to at least middle of the pack. Certainly the most improved line, adding Corey Linsley, and that the way that Slater fell to them, like I think that's going to just mean the world to this offense. Maybe Lombardi, he did bust with the Lions, but comes from the Saints, pass happy. If it all clicks, he's the guy that I could see really just lighting it up. We already saw him light it up as a rookie, so it's not like so bold, Wolf, but like we've seen this guy already kind of go nuts and maybe you're hampered a little bit by the surroundings around him, whether it's a protection or play calling. If those two things line up for him, I could see him leading the league in passing touchdowns. And well, with Mahomes in the league, that's pretty tricky to do. But I love Herbert to maybe break that tier as well.
Totally fair. And Lombardi's history, even going back to college, his previous coordinating stints have highlighted the X receiver. And the X receiver in this offense is Mike Williams, who under Anthony Lynn was pigeonholed as a deep and red zone threat. That's why he's led the team in air yards every year. And that's why he's also led in end zone targets, because that's just the type of player he is. Good because Hunter Henry vacated a team-high 10 end zone targets. But also there's a legitimate chance here that Lombardi does not see Williams is that type of receiver in a contract year and feeds him 120, 130 targets. And imagine Mike Williams getting 130 targets. My God. So that upside is absolutely baked in, because that includes Herbert, who would be chunking him with the ball and likely having success doing it downfield.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, they recently commented, I think it was an Athletic article, saying, our ex receiver moves around a lot. We use him all the way. I mean, that was the Mike Thomas role over there with the Saints. They put Mike. We know Keenan Allen's going to lead this team in targets, but still, as you said, anything over 110, 120, 130. Jeez, that's just getting me excited over here thinking about that one. But in terms of, so you've already talked about your top targets is that top tier. You want to try to get one of those top 5 guys. Worst case, a Jalen Hurts that might break into the tier. After that, what are you doing at the quarterback position? Is there another tier that you're like, all right, this is always going to be my second, or do you just kind of get your top guy and then just see how the rest plays out?
So I do a lot of 2 quarterback builds. And since Lamar and Dak, for whatever reason, have been falling, Lamar especially, I have 0 Josh Allen. And it's not that I would love to have Josh Allen. I can't get Josh Allen because his ADP is too high. And so I've ended up with a lot of Lamar. It doesn't make sense to grab another top guy with Lamar. So I usually wait for Trey Lance or Justin Fields. Those are my 2 middle tier guys. And then I build with those 2 quarterbacks. I don't do much 3 quarterback builds at all.
Yeah, and I think it was you too that tweeted out, was it today, that Trey Lance's playoff schedule, isn't it completely insane, right? Like Texans, Titans, and another joke.
Falcons, Texans, Titans. And I know everyone says that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to think that too far. But honestly, that is literally the edge, one of the many, the sharp Justin Herzig of Establish the Run had when he took down the first Best Ball Mania for $200K last year. He even said he stacked that Saints-Falcons game knowing it would be a shootout. Yeah. And Kamara, what happened? He scored 6 touchdowns. So it took a blow-up week, but it makes sense to look that far in advance, because everyone says, oh, well, everything might change. Sure, it might, but what if it doesn't? Then it already takes getting lucky to get that far. And so if you get that far, why not have just a little bit of setup? Why not have just a little bit of approach to it? And so just looking at those Week 17 games in particular, I think is a major edge. And by the way, the Rams play the Ravens in Week 17. So any Lamar stacks, even if you're going naked with him and not playing with the receiver, since he can support that as a rushing quarterback, I think you should always run it back with, let's say, Tyler Higbee or Van Jefferson in the last round.
Very intriguing. Nice. I love that. I mean, it's true. If you're going to win the million this year, as you mentioned, 150-something thousand people, you have to be having that foresight. Absolutely. What about in terms of avoids? Is there any tiers, groups of quarterbacks, or just whether you want to use groups or specific names that you're I'm just not going here at all this year?
It is pretty much the last tier. I started even with Deshaun Watson because, again, you have to get a little wild in these tournaments. And the 3 quarterback builds I do have, it is with Deshaun Watson as my 3rd quarterback, knowing full well that it could just be taking a 0. Most likely taking a 0, honestly. But if he's cleared and then traded, because I don't think he would play for the Texans even if he is cleared, then he's clearly in that tier, not because of talent, he'd be in the top tier. He'd be at the 2nd tier. It's because he may not play at all. So that's the one player I dip to. Other than that, though, I have seen a lot of – I'm curious to get your opinion on Carson Wentz. I've seen a lot of very sharp players take the dip on all the Colts, and that makes a lot of sense. And especially ADP, because the risk is baked into it. But there's some major risk that those players are just complete busts. There's a reason why the Colts baked that conditional pick they traded to the Eagles for Carson Wentz into the trade, because now Carson Wentz, if he doesn't play 75% of the team snaps, that first round pick becomes a second round pick. That's a huge deal, because if this team is mediocre or just bad, they will bench him, throw Jacob Eason in the last month of the season, and just say, that's fine. We got him for a second round pick. No big deal. And so I'm really worried about the Colts, but I want to get your take. And 2, I guess that's the lowest I'd go.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, obviously you have that Frank Reich connection where, Carson Wentz was on that MVP pace and looking like the next biggest QB in the league. And maybe if anyone's going to resurrect him, it would be Frank Reich. And they already, all the articles about the synergy being back and, the chemistry and all that good stuff. But I don't know that I buy it. I mean, all the reports about the locker room not respecting him last year. And it's like, sure, it helps to obviously have a coach that believes in you, of course. But the players also have to believe in you too. And if this is not a guy that's like, is kind of old schooly as it might sound, a leader of men, like if that's not him, then the team is going to quit on him sooner than later. And yeah, he's got some talent, but like T.Y.'s old. If they had gone for Julio Jones, like obviously this is a way different conversation. But if T.Y. is still your top, maybe Paris Campbell, I don't know. I don't love the weapons. Really, if you're just banking on a coach and quarterback relationship, that's your only kind of thing to bank on. And that's really all I got here for him. Like, Rivers didn't have that many big games. He had an okay season. Like, it's just not, to me, I'm with you. Like that, I'm not going, if I'm hitting Wentz, that means I've gone too late. I'm kind of screwed on that team. I typically need to get my, Fitzpatrick, given how cheap he is, it's like, give me Fitzpatrick all day. Give me a rushing quarterback. But especially, I'm going to start reconsidering getting that elite guy. But yeah, I'm not in on Wentz. Like, I don't buy into the whole bounce back, because it's just completely coach driven. And yes, I do love studying coaches and looking at all that, but I don't know. I'm not in on it. I'm with you there.
Makes sense.
For sure. Well, I don't know if you've already told me your single best pick, but is it Lamar? Is there another quarterback that you consider like the best pick right now in best ball and fantasy?
So the first rounds, if you're going from the top tier, it is Dak and Lamar. I'd have to look at my exposure, but I'm pretty sure those are my 2 highest owned quarterbacks, highest rostered. And then if it goes to tier 2, I love two QB builds also with Jalen Hurts and Trey Lance. Those are going to be my 4 guys I will be above market on. ADPs are they're maybe not incorrect for Trey Lance, but you should leap 3 or 4 rounds for Trey Lance, because people are treating him like he would be your QB1. Again, you're building with 2 quarterbacks or 3 quarterbacks with him. And then G doesn't have to start the first 5 games because they hit bye on week 6. If he comes out after week 7 and is the team starter for the blueprint reasons, then he could easily still finish inside the top 10, because his best comp is Michael Vick. He is literally Michael Vick if it is all put together. And if you can get Michael Vick for 10 games, he's going to break the tier. And so that's why I love just making sure I have him as my backup to start the year.
Absolutely. I love it all. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.